Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Writers Hub here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia. Maybe you know me as the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill. And joining us on the show today is an author making their official debut here on the show. Now, she is a professionally classical and tango pianist from Rosario, Argentina. Based in the United States since 2021, she currently works at Rollins College in Florida. A late diagnosed AuDHDer with a special interest in the world of words, she writes in Spanish and translates her own works to English. She has completed 8 novels across fantasy, science fiction, and mystery, and is currently working on her 9th, and her 10th, and her 11th. Her debut novel, The Red Harbinger, the first book of a completed high fantasy saga, will be making its official release March of next year. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a huge round of applause to our guest today, author Sofía Mihelic. Sofía, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Gabriel. It's an honor.
Awesome, Sofía. I am so excited to have you here on the show. I've had a chance to look at your socials, get an idea of who you are and the books, and it is so awesome to finally have you here. So, before we dive into our discussion for today, would you like to share a little bit more about your background in writing and some of the books you've written along the way?
Thank you. Yes, so my main way of finding out that I really wanted to be a writer was through the Harbinger saga, which is the one I'm going to start publishing in March. It's a 4-book saga, it's high fantasy, it's finished. And I'm currently going through the process of translating it because, it's written in Spanish and I'm translating my own work, which is, pretty challenging,
Mm-hmm.
as you probably can see. And that was my first inkling that I really wanted to do this. It was these outbursts of ideas just flowing on the page, having dreams and about like different plot lines, and then having to wake up and put them into paper. Um, I've been a professional pianist for well, well, for 20 years now. So that's my day job. But I decided to give this a real shot. And well, after that, I did a sci-fi duology, a mystery novel in the shape of an opera. And now I'm currently working in like 3 different fantasy projects at the same time because ADHD.
Oh my gosh, that is absolutely insane. And I imagine for each book, you have your own set of rituals and routines to get you
Ooh,
in the
yeah.
mode, which, ladies and gentlemen, is the topic of today's episode of the Writers Hub series, Rituals and Routines. So let's start with the very first question, Sophia. So, in your opinion, how do you define ritual in the context of your creative process? And what customs or routines do you consider essential to your specific writing practice?
Well, as someone who grew up with, sagas like Harry Potter that were delivered consistently every year, and then, of course, went through the same thing that probably all writers and readers in our generations uh, went through, which is to be a little bit let down by George R. R. Martin and his never deliverance of Winds of Winter and the remainder of the Song of Ice and of Ice and Fire saga. Um, I decided to kind of study the great writers and what's the difference between the ones that produce and the ones that get stuck. Of course, I think there's no right way, no right
Hmm.
answer, and that literally depends on each person, each type of brain. Um, but over the last, let's say, year, ever since last summer, I started working on some routines, I would say, that of course can turn into rituals if they are repeated
Hmm.
enough. for myself to see what worked. As a AuDHDer, which is a person that has ADHD and autism together, so my brain
Mm.
works a little bit weird. So I've always struggled with routines, with keeping to a schedule, and basically with repeating the same habits over and over, which is basically what you need to do and to have to be successful in any area of life. And as a musician, there's there's the need to spend a lot of time in the instrument and
Mm-hmm.
practicing and being consistent. And I've always struggled with that. So I discovered, well, a few things. One of them is that we have beliefs about ourselves. And the moment we start challenging those beliefs is the moment in which we start making progress towards our goals. For example, I used to say I'm the least athletic person in the universe. So I'm like, okay, let's start holding a plank and let's see how far I can go. And how far I could go was like 15 seconds, and I would just fall into the floor, uh, just a leap of exhaustion. So I'm like, okay, let's do 5-second increases. So
Right.
every couple of days, I did 5-second increases and then 10-second increases, and I ended up doing 6 minutes. Okay, so now the person that can hold a 6-minute plank is not the same person that used to say that she was like the least athletic person in the universe. So it kind of challenged that belief about myself. Also, the belief that I could not keep a plant alive. I used to be the green reaper, and I just, made a habit of, watering the plants. If you water them, usually they will live. Things like that. And I started applying some of those to the writing
Mm.
process. Mainly, even in the thick of this school year, in which, just to give you a little idea, I work as a piano accompanist, the piano instructor, and I work several hours a day. It's very variable, but usually during the months of like October, November, and then March, April, it's crazy. It's like all the final concerts, recitals, students' recitals. There's just a lot to do in my day job. And I'm like, okay, how am I going to keep being a writer through this? So I'm like, okay, let's do a little something every day. And that just a little something every day, just like the plank and just like watering the plants, ended up being all the difference in the world. Just a little bit every day. Now, right now, I'm on summer holidays, so I have a lot of time to write. So I've been doing, if you were checking my socials, I've been doing what I call the Stephen King challenge, which is let's, challenge myself to see if I can write 2,000 words a day. It turns out in my free week, yes, of course I can. It's just a matter of, sitting down and, in my case, not necessarily doing the next thing. Let me explain. I write in very short scenes.
Mm.
So I do this outline, this typical question that you pose writers: Are you a planner or a plantser or a pantser? I'm a plantser. So I do an outline of how many chapters I'm going to have, how many scenes in each chapter, and that depends on each book. Like, for example, there's maybe in the religion of this particular work in progress that I have, the sacred number is 5. So I'm like, okay, 5 parts with 5 chapters each. Each chapter has 5 scenes. So it's 125 plus, epilogue and prologue. That's 127. That's how I calculate the progress of my different scenes. So I have no idea what's coming in the scenes. I know what has to happen. So what I will do is I will just write what comes to mind in whichever part of the novel that my mind is at right then. So not necessarily what is coming next in the storyline, but wherever my mind feels like going that day. So in that way, I kind of keep the consistency, but at the same time, I keep it creative and I keep my mind free enough, because I kind of need both, AuDHD. I need the structure, but I also need some freedom from the structure. So,
Absolutely.
but through the school year, what I do is I just write a scene a day, just one scene, and that could be anywhere in the novel that I'm currently writing on, and usually write two or three at the same time. So that keeps my mind stimulated, and it allows for like bursts of inspiration, which is the time that I have, because maybe I will have maybe half an hour to write, but I will try and do it every day.
Hmm.
And now during the holidays, I'm trying to set myself more interesting challenges. I'm hoping to finish my current novel maybe this week, maybe next week, and then outline the upcoming ones in which I've been writing on and off. When I don't get the inspiration for one, I get the inspiration for the other.
Nice. Well, you certainly are busy, Sophia. I've tried doing one project in between each other, and I found for myself as an author, I can't do that. So I stick with one project first, and I just go with it until the end. Though I will say for the other project that I have worked on, it's about maybe want to say 75% written. I just got to write the last few chapters. So I'm not that totally far off. But as we're going to talk about later in this episode, every author's routine and ritual is unique and specific
Mhm.
to them. So let's go into the next question, which is on personal rituals. Now, what specific rituals do you personally engage in before, during, or after your writing sessions? And how do they help set the tone for your work? I know you said that you've also, taken watering the plants and that mindset to your writing process. Are there any other personal rituals that you do in your day-to-day life that you then apply to your writing?
Well, there's a reason I chose this subject, because there's like a lot of them. And so I have this silly little app that just counts on my progress, that I can, add different tiny little rituals or routines and then tick them off. And that feels, that gives you like the dopamine hit.
Hmm.
It's a silly little thing. It's kind of like a Tamagotchi, but it really helped me. I've been doing it for a year. But I think even when I didn't have that, I could track my progress on different tasks on my planner. So my tasks are currently a lot. So let's start from the beginning of the day, because I usually, well, I wake up at 5:30 because of my husband's work. He leaves for work at 6, so I wake up and make him coffee before he leaves. And so
Right.
around 6:20, I have nothing to do. I'm at the house, so that's when I have the morning routine. So that involves, of course, coffee, because caffeine first.
Yes.
Coffee and my breakfast, and I will bring the coffee and the breakfast and a liter of water and my morning vitamins next to my computer, and I will start writing as I finish my breakfast. And usually at some point during the morning, I will do meditation. I will do some affirmations. Watering the plants, feeding the cat, because, well, that I don't need a reminder for that. That's the only task that I never need reminding for, because she'll just jump on your face and meow until you just feed her. So that's one
Right.
that I don't need any reminders for. After that, it depends on the day. There will be some exercising. Um, every day, regardless of whether I exercise or not, I will stretch, because I've had tendinitis in the past, and I need to stretch my arms. And for all of my current works, both as pianist and as writer, you kind of need your hands in good condition. So my neck, um, and well, there's plenty of those little tasks stretched throughout the day. I Now that I'm in the summer, I've also started doing like paper books, like reading paper books. Of course,
Okay.
as a lot of us, fans of books, let's say readers or writers, usually all writers are passionate readers. I don't think that there's even an exception to that rule.
Very
So
true.
of course we all collect books, and some of us, we hoard them, right? Like the book dragon, right? So I'm like, I have all of these beautiful books. I even started collecting some special editions. I should start reading in paper again, because ever since I got my Kindle and since I discovered audiobooks, it's like either one or the other. So I'm like, okay, one chapter a day at least of a paper book. At least during the summer, we'll see. I also vary the routines according to the time I have, the kind of week I'm having. Like I said, right now during the summer break, plenty of time, so I'm doing a lot of like self-care tasks together with a lot of reading and writing.
Hmm. Nice. Very, very nice. I'm also a big reader as well. You can't really see Sophia, but I am surrounded by books on all sides. A lot of trad books and a lot of indie books. I've been actually getting indie books much more frequently than trad books. I love supporting fellow authors, and I also have some of the books that a lot of my fellow authors who are now my best friends have written as
Mhm.
well to add to my collection. And this actually is something that it's not listed in the questions, but I would like to hear your thoughts on, these rituals or routines. Is a lot of authors have said this in the past, but let's say you're working on a new project, a new
Mm.
outline. Now, do you read as well at the same time when you're working on that, or do you not read because you fear that what you're reading could possibly influence your writing in some way? You may be taking a plot element or something special from that book and adding it to your own.
Well, no, I tend to read all the time, regardless. So it's just an addiction. You can't not do it. Um, it can be tempting sometimes to deviate towards the type of language or the type of plot that you're currently reading. That's why I
Right.
try to like keep it different. But you can't necessarily do that. And of course, as I am a not a very faithful author in the way that I tend to write 2 or 3 projects at the same time. Also, I tend to read 2 or 3 books at the same time. So
Mm,
one in audiobook and one in paper right now, for example. And
okay.
they're both fantasy, for example, and it's exactly the same thing that I'm writing. Um, but I don't think I'm tempted to do that anymore because, right at this point, I had some experience like on me. So my first novel, I call it the unpublishable one. Uh, you could actually see what I was reading at the time. And my Tolkien obsession, that was actually the first time I started thinking as a writer. When you
Okay.
read a book and you're like, okay, this is awesome. Could never do this. This is absolutely amazing. That's when you thinking, as a reader. And you start thinking as a writer, you're like, okay, this is awesome. I could never do this. I do it differently, or I would change. So I got obsessed with Tolkien when the movies came out. Oh God, I was a teenager. And I was like, this is amazing. I wish I could write something like that. And like, there's no female characters, very honorable exceptions there. But it's like, we did something kind of like this with a fellowship and so on, but with you know, a female character. So that's the story. But then as I progressed throughout my teenage years, and I was like 15, 16, and I discovered Arthur Clarke and Ray Bradbury and Isaac Asimov and all the classic sci-fi authors, suddenly a secondary subplot that
Right.
was purely sci-fi, post-apocalyptic sci-fi, suddenly appeared. And I'm like, how the hell are these going to fit in together? And they did, of course. But that was my first book, and I call it my Tolkien meets Arthur Clarke, and they beat the shit out of each other. So yeah.
Nice.
Um, so sometimes you can get influenced, but that was, a teenage experiment. After that, I sort of kind of do my own thing anyway. But I did have this weird experience the other day. I was watching Akira. Well, my husband and I were both big geeks, big nerds, and we've been going through like the top 100 of animes of all time. So we saw Akira for the first time, and I'm like, oh my gosh! Halfway through the movie, I'm like, I know how this is going to end. I know how this is going to end. This is amazing, and I wish I had thought of that
Mm.
because now I can't do that because it would be stealing. I could predict halfway through the movie exactly how it's going to end, and it was perfect. And they actually did not end that like that. So I'm like, okay, I'm keeping this, and I'm doing my alternative ending because I'm technically not copying. Just my mind jumped to conclusions, and it ended up not being correct. So I'm glad I didn't have to steal.
Nice. Very, very nice. All right. Thank you for sharing with that, Sophia. Thank you. So now let's jump on to the next question. And we're actually going to talk about the impact rituals have on creativity. Now, in what ways do you believe rituals enhance one's creativity? Can you share an example of a time when a ritual positively influenced your writing?
Well, there's several things. When one of my the first things that I do when I start officially writing a novel, there's one thing to have an idea that you just randomly wrote on a piece of paper or on your notebooks. I have my assigned notebook, my bedside table notebook, just for that. And there's a lot of random ideas there. But sometimes I'm like, okay, so this idea may actually match with this other idea here, and eventually the profile of a book comes to mind. So for me, it's important to name it. And it's weird, but if I don't have a name, I don't feel like I could officially start writing the book because I feel like the name it's so important for the project. That's for me. I know there's a lot of authors that will finish writing the book and then they will name it. But for me, it's important to have the name beforehand because it kind of sets the atmosphere.
Right.
So, for example, when I have this kind of defining moment in my
Mm.
writing story, which is when I found A Song of Ice and Fire. The Game of Thrones books. I read those books. I first started watching the TV show by episode 3. I saw based on the novel by, and I just went straight to get the books. I read them all in the space of like a few months, and throughout those months, I was like, okay, this is awesome. This is what I've been looking for all my life. Like this complex world with multiple POVs, these polyphonic, and I'm like a fan of polyphony in both, music and also literature. I feel like what you like in a certain type of art, you will like in the other. That's at least my experience. So I'm like, this is what I love. This is what I want to do. But now I can't do this. I can't write like this. So I kind of gave up on writing for like a year and a half. That was a crappy year and a half. That was like the worst year and a half of my
Mm.
life. And then I'm like, okay, by the time, book 5 came out and then no other books came out, I'm like, okay, now that I've reached the end, at least so far, then I started, thinking as a writer. I'm like, okay, it is so good. It is so cool. It opened up so much. I honestly am of the opinion that there's no way to close that up into books. You need at least 4 because it opened up so much. Like books 4 and 5 are literally at the same time. There's so many plot lines going on. And I'm like, yeah, maybe I would do that, but the other way around. Maybe start it with a lot of plot lines and then put them all together instead of starting with this few and then opening up so much. Like I would do the opposite. And that's why I started thinking as a writer again. So I had a couple of unfinished projects, things that I had written 1 or 2 chapters, but had no names. I'm like, okay, there's one. There was a fantasy one, and I only had a single plot line. But I'm like, okay, I'm gonna name it. And that was the Red Harbinger. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna name this. But I'm going to need way more plot lines because there's just 4 characters here, and they're
Right.
just all in the same plot line and on the same POV because that's my main character if I have one. And then I started dreaming of all the other characters. I started, just having this random bouts of inspiration. I would see a scene in the streets, and back then I was living in Argentina, so there's more extreme things that you can see in the streets over there, like people living in the streets, very sometimes violent things. So I just got my inspiration from random places, and I got all my plot lines. But it all happened from the moment I just named it. I named it, and I knew this was going to be, in Spanish we call it a river novel, like
Mm.
like different plot lines, like a polyphonic novel, like multiple POVs. We call it a river novel. So I decided it's going to be that, and then by naming it, it kind of just all fell into place. And in the upcoming, like, say, 3 years, I wrote 4 books. And here's the thing: I didn't know this. Now in retrospective, it's so funny. But what I said is, like, I'm going to finish this whole saga before George R.R. Martin publishes Winds of Winter. Yeah, of course. I've written 8 books since, so yeah. And the ninth is about to be finished. So I didn't know how ironic that was. But I set kind of a deadline for myself. Like, I need to do this like 2 or 3 years, and no, didn't happen. So that's one of the things. Then how rituals kind of affect your inspiration. I feel like the habit of just sitting down and write, even though you don't feel like it, even though you maybe you may believe that you're not inspired that day, just the habit of sitting down and putting some words into paper or computer or whatever you do, it just trains you. I call it, I don't know how you call it, but it's like you plug yourself into the source, and
Right.
and if you get the balance right, that things start flowing through you, right?
Absolutely.
Don't you feel like that?
Yes, very, very true, Sophia. Very, very true. And that kind of leads into the next question, which I think every author deals with when it comes to their writing, especially if they're working on multiple projects at the same time or they have an idea for another book, and that is overcoming the dreaded writer's block. Now, for you, Sophia, do you have rituals that help you overcome the dreaded writer's block or creative fatigue? And if so, what do these practices involve?
Hmm. What I just do is I just dip into, so as you can see, me being a mix of, autistic and ADHD, it's like I I decided to get the best of both of them, because they can be very contradictory, and that's kind of why I flew under the radar for 36 years undiagnosed, because they kind of contradict each other, because one of them wants attention, the other wants solitude, one of them wants routines and rituals, and the other one hates them
Mm,
but actually thrives on them. So the creative, the chaotic part of me, like, that's the ADHD side, and the routine loving uh, part of me, that's the autistic part. But I think regardless of whether you're a neurodivergent person or not, we all have those two sides, like the chaotic and the orderly side, right? It's about balancing
absolutely.
them out. And also, all of us have a different combination of them and a different use to them. Some people, like you, I believe, dig more into their orderly side. Like, for example, you only write in one project at once. You don't
Hmm.
have that much of a chaotic, like that squirrel in your mind, right? You're more, okay, I'm going to do this. So that's like that obsessive trait that all artists have, and that's absolutely amazing. But for me, I have to deal with that chaotic side, with like the hamster on the wheel, trying um, to bring that chaos. So for me, what I do is, if I just can't keep going, I will switch projects completely. I will write whatever. I will go back to correcting something. I will maybe edit something, maybe translate something. There's always a lot to do. Um, and not all of it has to do with working on your current work in progress. But usually main tool is just switch POVs, switch WIPs, or start outlining your new novel. Start going through the ideas notebook, the bedside table notebook, and see what you have there that can turn into a new project. Or if all else fails, just spend a couple of hours translating one of your manuscripts because that's needed. And it doesn't require so much inspiration, but it's also creative work. So, yeah. What about
Absolutely.
you?
For me, like for dreaded writer's block, like there have been days where I will I will actually not write for a few days and I'll just let my brain just, take a breather, but I'm constantly thinking, I'm constantly imagining it in my head, especially for my latest project, which I'm working on. It's the first of a trilogy
Mhm.
among many others called The Seven Blades of Nobunaga, a historical fiction epic set in
Ooh.
medieval Japan.
Oh,
And
wow, that's amazing. That's my setting.
oh, really?
That's amazing. Yes, mine is not historical fiction at all, but I still had to do a lot of research. Admiration right there, my friend. I don't know how you do it. The amount of research. Oh my gosh.
Yes, and not to mention I've now kind of rewritten most of the book because in its original infancy, it felt more like the titles of episodes and like episodic adventures or like Saturday morning cartoons kind
Mhm.
of stuff because you had the main character who we are introduced in like 1560 and chapter 2 jumps 10 years to like 1570. It's like, okay, there has to be more information there has to be some more things in between those 10 years because we're expected to believe that in just 2 chapters he did all of this off screen. No, that
Mm.
may work for film, that does not translate well to books. So I had to restart the whole thing. So I had to go from
Mm.
1560 and just add like several new chapters. And now I'm at almost close to 200,000 words. I'm at like 190,000,
Wow.
which it is a lot, especially as I'm now kind of adding in another subplot in this series of mine. But what I do plan to get out later this year, which is kind of a test for me as an author, and its original in of itself, is can I create a novella within a certain word count and not go over? That was not easy. And I think a lot of authors who are not used to writing in a small word count would
Hmm.
definitely struggle. I definitely struggled with yeah, I definitely struggled with that, but this one it was a very fun one. It was a very near and dear to my heart, and I don't want to spoil too much, but what I can say is if you're a fan of Rocky, you're a fan of time travel, and a fan of gladiators and Spartacus, then you will definitely love this book. And it's the first of a duology because I already
I
have the
love it.
second book. Thank you. I already have the second book already written in its rough form. I'm now just tweaking it before I send it to my editor. And this kind of goes into something which I'm very keen to hear your thoughts on, Sophia, and that is group versus individual rituals. And I've talked to a lot of authors on this, and some authors do well when they work in like a writing circle or join a what's the word I'm thinking of?
Writing group.
Writing group as well as doing like writing sprints for like
Oh.
time like 15 minutes of like how much can you get done in like 10 to 15 minutes, and some people do well
Mhm.
in those regards, some people do not. So I would like to hear your thoughts on this, and from your own personal experiences, do you find value in writing rituals that are shared with fellow writers, and if so, or if not, what collaborative rituals have you found to be the most effective?
Well, in here, I don't have a lot of experience because I've only very recently joined Bookstagram. Um, I've been at it for like a little under 3 weeks, and I've already met so many fantastic people, so many talented, amazing people. So now, of course, I'm like more like the whole universe of collaborative work opens up to me. Not only this, type of collaboration, but also like, writing challenges, um, like collaborative work, writing groups, all of that. Because writing is such a solitary work.
Hmm.
Um, and to me, well, as a pianist, I was a soloist for the longest time, and it was boring, honestly. And it was also nerve wracking to be up there all by yourself and to be able to share your stage with other people. It's a completely different experience because you feed off of each other's energy. So now I've not been engaging actually in collaborative work per se, but I've been, chatting with fellow authors and, exchanging ideas, just like we're doing right now. And
Hmm.
that by itself, I feel like it's so enriching. And I've also, just like yourself, I'm building a huge TBR of all my fellow authors
Yes.
in the books. And now I want to start collecting in the books because I want to, read all of what these wonderful people that I already know and I already enjoy, like little flickers of their progress. And I want to see what they do. And the idea of doing a writing group, that would be absolutely amazing. I'm already into two ARC groups, reading for two fellow authors, and I'm super excited about like different possibilities of collaboration because I just discovered this and being alone at it for so long. Imagine I'm 38 years old and I started writing when I was maybe all of my life, but like seriously, like my first novel when I was like 14. So that was like you know, the sort of wings to different writers novel.
Right.
Um, but I've been doing it for a long time, all alone. And it's so exciting to see all these other possibilities. They're just opening up. So just looking forward to more of that. What about you? Do you have like a writing group or something?
I I am part of I am actually a member of the California Writers Club here in Orange County, California, and it's
Oh,
been very
you're in
helpful.
Orange County too? I'm in Orange County too, but in Florida. This is so
Yeah,
much fun.
I know. I always have to tell people like there's two Orange counties. There's one in Florida and one in California. It's so hysterical. Especially there was
And
one
we're three
one good
hours
friend.
apart. It's like when you
Yes.
send the invitation, like 10 a.m. Okay, cool. And I was like, what do you mean 1 a.m.? Yeah, very
Oh
different.
my gosh, yes, the whole time conversion. Yes, that is honestly hysterical. That is honestly hysterical. But yes, I am a member of the California Writers Club in Orange County, California, and it's been super helpful, super amazing to meet fellow authors. I met really great friends there. Actually, friends with the vice president of the club. Shout out to Elizabeth Rhodes, who actually told me about the club and the community in the first place and got me hooked ever since. And it's just been, amazing experience, collaborating with fellow writers, learning what works for them, and just seeing their thought process. And it's just been such a magical feeling all around, and just, being a part of like-minded people who may write in different genres than you or different
Hmm.
prose, but at the end of the day, we all are part of the same goal, which is the preservation of the written word now more than ever.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, in times of AI, it's like to conserve actual human creativity is so important. It's like we're the keepers of knowledge in a way. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well said, Sophia.
Hmm.
Well said. So now this goes into the next one. And this one, I am very interested in hearing your thoughts on, because you mentioned something earlier about, you are doing the Stephen King routine, trying to get your book out in a certain time. And I've
Hmm.
heard a lot of authors say they've done this. Some people have been successful, other authors have definitely struggled. And in some cases, it has turned sometimes very negative and like killed the passion for writing.
Mm.
So, this is a print discussion on consistency versus flexibility. And in your opinion, how do you balance consistency in your rituals with the need for flexibility in your creative process. Because I can also imagine, when school starts again, there's going to be some days where you may not want to write at all. You may just have had a bad day at the job and you just
Hmm.
want to just unwind and just veg.
Well, yes, definitely. I have some days. Like I said, my work is it's very variable. So is my income. So my work hours can be anywhere from like 0, like this week. Well, this is actually my week off. Next week, let's say maybe I will work for like 10 hours the whole week, but sometimes I have like 60-hour weeks. And 60 hours playing the piano, uh, or you're doing teaching work, usually one-on-one. I feel like it's sometimes more intense work than if you were working like at a factory or doing something like more automatic in which your mind can just fly and do
Right.
something else. My mind, well, usually it doesn't fly, but here's the thing. When and this is actually something that we did not touch into in our previous question, which is how to get out of the writer's block. But sometimes when you're blocked, doesn't it help to just do something very tedious? And your mind will kind of allow itself to fly and will land on a new idea. Well, here's what happens sometimes to me when I'm in the midst of the stressful school year. Like last year, for example, I was at this voice lesson in which I just play the piano. I'm the accompanist. I'm not the teacher. This is the voice teacher. This is the voice student, and I'm the piano accompanist. And so this student was singing so out of tune, and I was in such like pain, like almost physical pain from hearing that. And of course, it's the student. They're learning. They're in their process. But I was like struggling to keep my face like steady and not make a grimace or laugh or just do something that might make the other person who's learning uncomfortable. And then I'm like, okay, what if a character was like an extreme autistic power, like affected by all sounds around them? What if this character could hear sounds that others don't? Maybe produce sounds that others don't? And maybe that could be like a sort of superpower. Maybe they can hear magic that is only written. This written magic, and then this character can hear it, but the other people cannot because they are why? Oh, but maybe because they are a different race, they are a different species, they're a different creature. And that's basically the idea that gave birth to the book that I'm writing right now. So sometimes when you're in the middle of a very stressful, completely different activity, a part of that can even trigger your creativity. But yes, sometimes you just want to, sit in the couch and rot. What I try to do in those cases is I try to force myself to at least, I don't know, translate a paragraph, which is something that doesn't require so much creative energy. It's still creative work, but it's not the
Mhm.
same. It's like I always say, comparing with music, it's not the same to compose a piece, to write a piece from scratch, than to play something that's already written, right? You're translating it. So that's when I work more into my translator or editor part of me, because as writers we are everything, particularly indie writers. We do everything. We do,
Mhm.
we of course will have professional help with some things, but we have to go through a few edits ourselves. In my case, there's this secondary work of also translating the work, which is I only do it because I don't trust anybody else to do it. And I've also suffered so much through bad translations. Bad translations are one of my pet peeves in, well, songs, that's ugh. But books, I've been I grew up with the Harry Potter books, like I said, and some of the translations were so horrible. Like the Spanish translation of book 2 that came
Mm.
out in maybe 2000 and I don't know, maybe 2003, 4, something like that. It came out in Spanish. That was so terrible that I'm like, okay, if I ever need to get my work translated, like I need to do it myself. I'm not saying I'm good at it. I'm just saying that I'm the only person that I trust. We have this saying back home that is traduttore traditore, which is actually in Italian. We have a lot of Italian descent back in Argentina. So we have a few Italian sayings in our everyday life. And that
Right.
means translator, traitor. Um, so if someone was going to betray my writing, it would have to be me.
Mm.
So, and that's also the tedious part of the work. And for example, right now that I'm on holidays and I'm free to create, I tend to not do it. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to go through a couple of translations throughout the school year. I'm going to like concentrate most of my creative work in the holidays or on the weekends. So yeah, that's it.
Absolutely. And I do want to say this too, Sophia, as you're talking about this work in progress. I
Mhm.
could be wrong, but I think that is almost close. Exactly. I want to say like 90% to a friend of mine,
Really?
Sebastian Dorn, who is writing Infinilad, which is almost, again, I'm 90% sure that your guys' plots is exactly the same. I'm not even joking.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Well, that's the amazing thing. Like you can come up with exactly the same idea. I've never even heard of this person, but I came up with an idea one time, which was this very silly little idea in my first novel, the one that is like probably unpublishable. And it was this guy that he was named a very weird thing. And it was like something like two and this creature, right? Those
Mhm.
invented creature, like tumultuous. What do you call tumultuous? No, it's like it's a reduction because in my village, kids are named over the first thing the mother sees when she comes out of the hut with the baby in her arms, and she saw two multros doing, that. So
Mhm.
the full name was, and then I read the exact same thing in a Terry Pratchett book. But I swear I'd never read that particular Terry Pratchett book ever in my life when I came up with that idea. So, and that's the wonderful thing about ideas. Don't you feel like sometimes ideas are like living things? Like
Yes.
they find the suitable mind and they just go through it. But the thing is that the mind that translates them, the mind that expresses them, will actually give them different shape. I'm pretty sure, and now please keep me posted. And I would love for you to send me information about this other writer because I would love to finish my book and then read their book and see the differences in them because I'm pretty sure that they will be very different books deep down.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also, from my own kind of experience, I actually found this out. So I wrote a fantasy book, Michael That's Angel of Earth, which is what I call angelic fantasy. There was another author who's based in Virginia, Francisco Colom,
Mhm.
who wrote something very similar with angels, demons, and pixies. These are half angels. And then another author who's also based in Florida wrote a similar book with angels and demons. And if that wasn't crazy enough, all three of us are Puerto Ricans, so we
Oh my
all
God.
wrote the exact same type of story. As like, okay, this is really too coincidental. It's one thing for authors to write similarly. Another thing if like three authors who are all Puerto Ricans to write similar types of stories. That honestly was the craziest like catch 22 moment of like, do we have like a hive mind or something? Do we all think like this? It's absolutely hysterical and funny. But that's the thing when it comes to us as authors is that, as you mentioned before, like ideas are living. They are always going to
Exactly.
be there. It's going to be there no matter what. And how we approach the same idea is very different and very unique to us.
Exactly. And also think about how many, Dragon Riders books there are. Um, but and also things come in and out of fashion, right?
Right.
There's this, and sometimes it's just when three people of the same origin, have kind of around the same idea, maybe it was the time for those types of ideas to come back, because there's nothing really original anymore. If you go
No.
back generations, there's so many books that are not read anymore that may exactly portray the same ideas that we're writing about right now. So there's a reason, there's the evolution of society and the way we think. Um, don't you feel like any sort of fashion, like a way of thinking, um, even like big social and political movements just come back, and and it's like a spiral, right? It's not a circle because you don't go back exactly to the same spot. You're evolving, at least technologically, but human nature stays the same, right? So ideas are always the same, and ideas for books will always come back, and there will always be this. I love this quote. I don't even know who is by. I need to find that out. That I've been like shocked by ever since I was
Mhm.
a kid, which is there's um, no bigger power than the one of an idea whose time has come.
That's
And
beautiful.
maybe it was the time for that idea. Maybe it was the time to talk about angels and demons. And maybe
Hmm.
you all came with that idea because it needed to be said in three different ways. Why not? And I feel like, for
Absolutely.
example, getting inspiration from neurodiversity is something that a lot of authors, particularly in my generation, maybe these other authors you're talking about, maybe it's a millennial too, and a lot of us just flew under the radar of diagnosis for so many years. So that became a sort of theme for us.
Mhm.
And, big themes in our lives end up being big things in our fiction, of course. Like the things that move us, the things that
Absolutely.
shape us.
Well said, Sophia. Well said. We do have a few final questions, and I'm actually going to combine a few of them
Mhm.
into one set of questions or several set of questions. So we talked about a little bit of rituals. Actually, this is something that is very important because I would like to hear your thoughts on,
Mhm.
and that is, of course, in your opinion, what is the difference between a writing ritual and a writing routine? And do
Hmm.
both serve the same purpose or are they different?
Hmm. So I think that each of us have a different definition of this. So take this with a grain of salt because this is just
Mm,
my opinion on it. So a routine is something that you train yourself to do, that you feel like you have to do, and usually those are things that will be beneficial to you on the long run, right? Like meditation, exercise, eating well, things like that, and also writing routines. Now, I think that a routine becomes a ritual when it has more of your obsessive traits are kind of you know triggered by it, like
mm,
like a religious ritual, like you feel like you need to do this otherwise, right? And maybe your obsessive traits can play along with it, and then you feel like the need to do this otherwise, um, something wrong may happen, or otherwise you feel like you're letting yourself down. So I like to think more about routines than rituals, because
mm,
ritual has that sort of feel, just to me, just in my opinion.
right.
But of course, as a person with a high obsessive trait, I tend to transform my routines into rituals. And sometimes I need to remember that I'm human, remind myself that I'm human and that I can maybe not write for a day, or not read for a day, or not exercise, or not meditate, or I do try to take care of my plants because otherwise they die. But those things I can live without doing them for a day, and then do not become obsessed with it. So there's also a negative trait to all of
Yeah,
those routines that you build, and I
absolutely.
feel that's when they become rituals.
Yes, well said. And I think like it's share my own personal routine, which has definitely changed over the years, is that I was the author that I still write every day. But in
Good.
before, I wrote for 45 minutes a day. And I read 45 minutes a day. I read I wrote one day, I read the next day, and I just interchanged. And I did that for a while. I did that for my most recent book, Desmond's the Wolf of Rome. I did that, but I realized it was not really healthy. It was not really helping me.
Mm.
So I realized, okay, I can't write 45 minutes as I normally would. I can't. I can't do that anymore. And I'm not a morning person when it comes to writing or an afternoon person when it comes to writing. It just doesn't work for me anymore because, I do interviews. I do my podcast
Hmm.
like in the morning and afternoon. So I'm always busy. And the only time that I'm not busy is in the evening. So I am a night owl when it comes to writing.
I
And
used to be like that exactly. And now it just changed because of my change of schedule.
absolutely. And I write 20 minutes a day, and that
Mhm.
works for me. And that's why it takes me about maybe almost a few days, like maybe 3 days at most, to finish one chapter because my chapters are very, very lengthy. And, as we've talked about, it's different for each person. It's going to change. It's going to work what's best for that individual. But I think it's important to note that we should not let the routines dictate
Mhm.
our creative process and our own mental health because
Exactly. Yes, it can become, more of a hindrance than help.
absolutely. And it's okay to step back from your computer or from your notebook for a few days, or in some cases, a month, and then go back to
Absolutely.
writing. It's completely fine.
Absolutely. Yes. And also, there's different circumstances in your life. For example, right now, I'm in an absolutely privileged position. That's why this week I can do this because I'm not working at all. I I have all morning for myself. I'm alone in the house. I have no kids. I just have an annoying elderly cat. Um, and she will usually just lay in the floor and sleep, and that's it. So I have no interruptions. That is something that not a lot of people have. Some people have big families. Some people live with roommates. Um, and of course, again, I'm on holidays. My life is completely different. So I think that we should also keep our routines and even our rituals a little flexible to allow ourselves the time to, be human and to rest and to not burn out. Uh,
Absolutely.
mhm.
And we now come to possibly one that I think we have talked about a little bit in the beginning, and that is, of course, sharing rituals and routines. Now, as you mentioned before, you recently got on Bookstagram and started networking and connecting. And from the people that you have been able to connect with and have conversations with, how open are you to sharing your own personal routines and rituals with others? And I think I already know the answer to this one, but do you think this sharing can enhance your own practice as well? And bonus, have you heard of any success stories from the authors that you have interacted with who have seen great progress in their own writing because they took your routine or an aspect of your routine and applied it to their own?
Well, the last one, not no, not yet. But I do feel like we inspire each other, and that we can, we're sharing our, work progress of the day, and we congratulate each other, and sometimes one of them, tells the rest, I am so tired this week. This week has been terrible, and I've had like some health issues, or one of my kids, got into trouble, or my pet is sick, or things like that. And all the rest has been so supportive. I was like, yes, remember that you're human. You're allowed to step back. You can do this. I do have some rituals that I share with a friend of mine from back home in Argentina, who's also a reader and writer. Hello, Annie, if you are listening to this. So we do have the same little app, and we share a couple of routines. One of them is meditation, and the other one is writing every day. So we track each other's progress, and we can see when the other one has done it, and just encourage each other to do it. And I feel like that has been so much fun, and it has been so encouraging to keep working, each of us. And I am absolutely open to learning from others, their own routines. I've already learned so much about the writing and the publishing process with all of you guys. And I feel like every day is a learning process. And
Hmm.
I don't think we'll ever finish learning.
Nope.
But I feel like the process is so enriching when you talk with people that are going through the same thing and that have the same goals. Even though, like you said, like we may all be completely different. So I'm absolutely excited about joining different groups and sharing routines with others. And like I said, this little challenge that I did it for myself. But maybe other people can join it in the near future. If they're on holiday, they can do the Stephen King challenge and see if they can write 2,000 words a day. Or maybe we can do a write every day challenge or other types of things. And I think we can all learn from that and grow from that.
Absolutely, Sophia. Absolutely. And as a final question to wrap up this incredible episode of the Writers Hub, at the end of the day, Sophia, for the aspiring writers listening to our conversation, what do you want them to take away from our discussion of rituals and routines in the writing process?
Well, as someone who, um, and I'm talking from my musician experience, I did not fit in to other people's routines. Again, as an undiagnosed ADHDer for most of my youth, I became a professional pianist at the age of 16. And I had a career from a very young age, and I had to spend so many hours on the instrument. And that was torture. It was absolute torture. If I studied the way my elders, like parents, my teacher, told me that I had to work, like I had to spend 6 hours a day in the instrument. That was absolute torture for a tiny ADHD girl. So I, there came a point in which I had to make the routine work for me. So my advice would be, and of course now I've used that all of that experience in my writing. Make it work for you. Make it work for you, and don't care about what others. I mean, learn from others by all means, talk about them, see how they do their own process. But eventually, it's all what works for you, because nobody else is living your life. Nobody else lives inside your brain, only you. And just find what works for you. Keep it creative, keep it moving. If it doesn't work, ditch it, try something else. Try it next year. Maybe you will be a different person next year and it will work. Um, just learn from everyone, hear what everybody else is doing, try it all, and what works for you, because we're all different and it doesn't have to work for you. That's my main take of my whole life as a student and as a teacher. It doesn't have to work for you. I tell my students to this day, whatever I tell you, always take it with a grain of salt, because not everything that I tell you will work for you. You will get bad advice from me.
Mm. Beautifully said. And a nice way to end this incredible discussion here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. Want to give a huge thank you to Sophia for coming on the show, making her official debut. Now, Sophia, where can people find you on social media if they want to interact and connect with you? And where can people find all of your posts or updates on your book processes and more?
Everything is on my Instagram, my author Instagram, which is at Mihelic Sofia. What do you call the low
Underscore?
underscore? Thank you, underscore author. And Mihelic is Mihelic, and Sofia is Sofia, because that's a different spelling than usual. And I write all my updates there and reflections about books and about life. And I would love to connect with fellow writers and readers and all of us crazy people.
Nice, very nice. And you also said that your Harbinger, Red Harbinger series will be releasing March 2027.
Mhm.
When can people expect, any announcements on beta readers and ARC applications to be a part of it?
I intend to get those out as soon as possible. My book is currently at the editor. My translated book, my Spanish book is already ready. So I'll probably try to get the ARC applications for both languages around the end of the year for sure. And I'm planning to get some character art soon as well. But basically, as soon as possible, as soon as I get it back from the editor, because I want to basically work ahead of time rather than run out of time. So that's the plan.
All righty. I'll link all that down below in the description of
Thank
this
you.
video, ladies and gentlemen. And we will see you all in the next episode here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. Again, a huge thank you to Sofia for coming on the show. And if you'd like to see her back in her full-length author interview as a teaser for the Red Harbinger, you know what you have to do. Like this video, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, this has been the Wandering Scribe with the Wandering Quill signing out. Wish you all a wonderful Thursday wherever you are in the world. Take care and see you all on Friday for part 2 of the Authors Roundtable. Until then, have a wonderful day.